This video was brought to you by the lovely members of my Patreon.
And I think that that's what's so empowering to me. You know, it's been really, for me, a lot of my interest and appeal to BDSM has been my ability to set that boundary that says we are not having sex. Hey guys, it's Kat and it's time for another episode of True Tea. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me here for yet another episode of True Tea. We do these videos every single Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and I greatly appreciate those you guys who are here every single week. And I want to give a special shout out to my Patreon members who are watching this video earlier than everybody else and leaving it their long drawn out comments before everyone else gets to. I appreciate the early tea, the pre-release tea. You guys are always great, and I really appreciate that you guys are always interacting with each other, leaving thoughtful, long comments. I love it. Thank you so much for making my platform what it is. Anyway, what have you guys been up to? What's different in your life? What's going on your side of the world? I'm okay. You know, I'm doing pretty okay. I've been really backed up with work. I have so much work. I just feel like I'm perpetually behind on everything. I'm finally seeing some of my partners again. I've been very quarantined outside of that, but I'm finally seeing Nathan and Alexander. And that's it. That's really the only people who I'm seeing right now. Quarantine is definitely not fun, but I think I've been built for it. So I'm kind of enjoying it, I guess, in a way, because I have more time to create. And you guys know I always have a million things to do. So I'm happy that I have the job that I have. I'm thankful that I have this platform. Honestly, guys, thank you so much for making this quarantine more tolerable. It really, I really don't know what I would do without you guys. So thank you so much for that. Anyway, we're gonna be having a conversation about BDSM and sex. But before we do, I would highly suggest you go to your kitchen and grab yourself something to drink. I've got some Gatorade and I drank half of this and I decided that I would keep going because I don't like Gatorade and I need a good reason to drink it. And True Tea seems like a good enough reason. So let me take a sip of this and let's get right into this conversation. So I wanted to talk to you guys about sex and BDSM and whether or not BDSM is always sexual, because this was actually one of the most interesting points of contention in my recent reaction video to Blaire White's content about pet play. It's interesting to me just because, like, this is another one of those situations where what people read about or think about BDSM and what it actually is just contrasting so drastically. In that video, I talk about how most of the dungeons in Los Angeles do not allow you to have sex. And I think that that's kind of surprising for some people who probably think that BDSM is literally just a weird sex thing. And to be totally clear, BDSM is a weird sex thing for most people. I mean, BDSM is definitely something that a lot of people use in a sexual context. But as I think I've tried to always express on here, there are people who really do position BDSM at different layers of importance in their life. You know, I am somebody who, sure, you know, I do BDSM in the bedroom, but I'm far more interested and invested in the community that I have around BDSM and this sort of amazing type of people that you meet in these communities. You know, for me, one of my big focuses in life has always been living in an honest and authentic way. And I think that people in these sort of spaces, for the most part, there's always people pretending everywhere, but for the most part, these people are some of the most honest, raw, and open people you will ever meet. Because, you know, in so many ways, if you can't be yourself at a BDSM dungeon, where can you be yourself? You know what I mean? If you're given this safe space to explore and to be yourself and you're not comfortable doing that there, then where can you? You know what I mean? And so you do get a lot of people who are very honest and open and upfront, and just, I love that about the community. That is what just makes me so incredibly happy about being part of the community. And honestly, that's what I get out of it. And when I think about, like, all of the years that I've actively been in the BDSM community, I think I've probably done BDSM with maybe 30 people, and I've probably only had sex with 2 of them, you know? And it's interesting for me to think about that being my reality versus what people may assume BDSM to be. So I thought that we would talk a bit about that and sort of share my sort of thing about that. So let's begin. So I think one of the things that you might be interested to hear is that, at least in Los Angeles, and every BDSM community is different, and actually all the things that are popular in different cities are also very different. Like, I have a partner who lives in Portland, Victor. Hi, Victor. And he tells me all the time that in Portland, rope is really, really popular. In LA, impact is really, really popular. Portland has a little bit more of an integration of swing and kink and BDSM. To be clear, for most people, the swinger community and the BDSM community are very, very separate. But one of the biggest spaces in Portland for BDSM is also a swinger community. So it's really common for those things to mesh in that space. But LA is a little different, where you really do have your swinger clubs and your BDSM clubs, and very rarely do they intersect. There's one dungeon that kind of does both, but the other 2 really don't allow that, because a lot of BDSMers will say that having sex inside of these BDSM spaces really does change the vibe. And I talked about this in the video that I did about women getting into free for parties, because at the one dungeon where you can go in and walk in and have sex, it really is, it's a bizarre situation, because that's a space that has a lot of room and a lot of great equipment. And it really is a good space. It's kind of dirty, but it is a good space, right? But the swinger aspect of it, the sex aspect of it really does ruin it. And what I mean when I say that is that you get a totally different crowd. You know, at a BDSM dungeon, which, to be clear, most people go to BDSM dungeons because they've got the furniture and the equipment to do the thing, right? So for example, in my apartment right now, I've got my futon, my desks, I've got my 3 little workstations, my drafting table, my computer table, my sewing table over there. And I don't have a lot of space to have a spanky bench. I don't have a hard point to do suspension, right? And these are things that I really enjoy doing, but I can't do in my apartment. So I'll go to a dungeon where we've got the spanky benches and we've got the hard points and we've got the different places to bind your partner if that's something that you're into doing. And that's kind of why the space exists, right? It exists to give people a place to do that thing, but also do it publicly, in quotations, and do it safely with people that are watching out for them. And in that space, for a lot of people who care about BDSM enough to want to go there, the last thing they're thinking about is having sex. The last thing they're thinking about is, I want to go to this place to fuck in front of strangers. Because to be frank, while that is a kink that a lot of people have, it's just not something that really comes up. At most dungeons, here's kind of how it works. You've got your open parties that everyone can go to, basically, and those don't have sex allowed. And then you've got your members parties, right? And your members parties usually mean that you pay a certain amount of money per month in order to be a member of this dungeon. And at these members parties, you can technically have sex. I say technically because it is allowed, but even at these members parties, you're not going to see people fucking. I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible, but you're pretty unlikely to see it. It's not something that you should feel, is common. And listen, I go to a lot of events. Well, I used to go to a lot of events back when we could. And I love talking to people. And it is unfortunate that I've had a lot of conversations with people who are curious, who want to dip their toes. And they really were expecting like a full-on sex club, right? When really what it is, is more like a room full of sex nerds who are very specifically into doing this really specific paraphilia very well. And I wish that people kind of got that aspect of it, because, so for example, right, when Tony and his partner say in the video that pet play isn't sexual for them, that's very confusing to most vanillas who literally can't imagine BDSM not being sexual. But for so many of us, BDSM is part of our hobby. You know, for example, I am really trying to get into leather work, right? It's a thing I don't understand. It is still very, very new to me, and it's very, very interesting to me for that reason, because I don't know how to do it and I want to learn how to do it. I'm very, very interested in that. I know so many people who do this really amazing leather work in the BDSM community, and it's an art form. It's a craft, right? Does it also coincide with my enjoyment of being bound? Absolutely. Does it turn me on to wear something that is constricting? Yeah, it does. Not what you guys usually see me wear, because that's really purely decorative. I think most people could look at that and tell that it's not functional, it's more decorative. But there are other things that I have that do give me that sensation, and I enjoy it. I'm not ashamed of it. And I'm not ashamed of it. But you know, I enjoy it, and part of my enjoyment of it made me more curious about making harnesses and things for myself. And now I have this really deep interest that is adjacent to BDSM, is adjacent to kink, but is not necessarily about sex, right? Me hammering, you know, some grommets onto some leather is not about me getting, you know, screwed. And there are people who are also very into that thing who gather at BDSM conventions and have these deep conversations about that. To make it even more literal, or more physical rather, a lot of people enjoy spanking. Y'all know I enjoy spanking here and there, right? And yeah, your standard open hand spanking might be a good time, but maybe you like paddles. Maybe you like a piece of leather, a leather strap. Maybe you like a belt, right? And then there's all of this stuff that comes from that, all of this art, this creativity that comes from that does not require you to have sex. I let several people spank me and had no desire to have sex with them, because I enjoy what they do in terms of topping spank-wise, and sex doesn't even really come into my mind. Now, it may very well come into the mind of the men who are spanking me, but we have an understanding that that's not where this is going. And I think that that's what's so empowering to me. You know, it's been really, for me, a lot of my interest and appeal to BDSM has been my ability to set that boundary that says we are not having sex. I may let you do a certain thing to me, but we're not having sex. It's off the table completely, you know? And there is something really nice about having that communication, you know? I think that, so here's the interesting thing to me about a lot of the vanilla finger wagging at BDSM, right? Before I was actively engaged in a lot of these conversations, so much about my intimacy with other people was about me going with the flow and not discussing what I wanted, not discussing what my boundaries were, sort of going off of what he decided was and wasn't going to happen. And BDSM has truly, you know, encouraged me in a healthy way to really think about boundaries, to really draw up boundaries for myself. And that's kind of what I really enjoy about BDSM, that I can say, hey, I may want you to spank me, but I don't want to have sex with you. You know, and so much of BDSM, I think for a lot of women especially, is empowering for that reason. You know, I've talked before about how being flogged often feels like a massage, right? It feels like a really good massage. And if you've ever had a really amazing, like mind-blowing massage that's totally like let you relax, you've kind of probably already experienced like what some people would consider bottom space or subspace, right? Where you've just kind of retreated into this place where you're letting this person do all these different things to you and you're accepting it and it's a great time, and then you leave and maybe you're a little turned on, but you don't need to have sex, right? It's, I think, hard to explain when you're not experienced in doing it, but if you've ever had a really good massage, a lot of BDSM, at least to me, feels a lot like that, right? It feels a lot like you've had this really amazing experience that has loosened you up and now you recover, and sometimes after that you move better. Do you know what I mean? And I love that about it. A lot of my BDSM interest is pushing myself physically. And I really enjoy that. It's like working out, honestly. It's like, it's fun. It's a good time for me. But yeah, BDSM for me is not really something that is inherently sexual. And I understand why that would be confusing to people, but it's so funny to think about my life and then contrast it with that interpretation, you know, because, oh my God, y'all, like so many of the BDSM events I go to are just nerds standing around being nerds, honestly. Like that's, I would say 95% of them is nerds being nerds, standing around doing nerd shit. No one's fucking. I mean, maybe they're fucking when they get home, but no one's doing that, you know? And pet play is one of those interesting things where, yeah, there are definitely people who make it sexual for sure. But if you watch what Tony does in that video, so much of it is athletic. It's so athletic. I went to a pet play demonstration at DomCon a couple years ago, and it was a true treat because, you know, I didn't know just how physical so much of that stuff was. And if you look at the people who are into pet play, they often are people who are very athletic outside of that, you know? And for a lot of people, it is that kind of combination of the two things, their kink and their athleticism. And I think that that is just so cool, honestly. And if something like me getting tied up seems barely sexual to me, I can definitely see how Tony pretending to be a dog is like not even close to sexual for him and his partner. But I guess I feel that way because I'm in the community, because I do these things. I think that for other people, it might not be as obvious that that's the case. But yeah, I mean, another aspect to talk about is there are an incredible amount of asexuals, people who experience sex repulsion, who do not have an interest in sex, who really do get a lot out of BDSM, especially the way in which it allows some degree of intimacy that isn't sexual, you know? I think that like a lot of people who are outside of these conversations, but are always bumping up against them, I think you could learn a lot from just reading, you know? Just looking into what people do in BDSM, because I think part of my frustration with this particular conversation is that BDSM really has been polluted, frankly, by porn. You know, porn has really messed people's perception up about what BDSM is. You know, a lot of people do commit really strong portions of their life to BDSM, and they do that because it is fulfilling to them, right? In a way that isn't just purely sexual. Like, girl, let me just be frank with you. Most men want to sexually control me in the bedroom. Most men, right? It's easy for me to find some dude who wants to be dominant in the bedroom, which I would really appreciate it if vanillas would stop cosplaying as doms, because just because you like to order a woman around in the bedroom does not make you a dominant. That's another conversation. That's a debate and, you know, issue, and we won't get into it. But porn really has messed up a lot of people's perception of what BDSM is, honestly. Because I mean, I don't even watch BDSM porn because it's not titillating to me. It's not sexy or interesting to me because it's just a bunch of people, you know, using BDSM to get to their orgasm. And I guess that works for some people. I'm not going to try to say that it's not valid. It totally is, but that just doesn't reflect most of the people who I know who do BDSM at all. You know, so many people get so excited about negotiating a thing and experiencing a thing that is the result of their negotiation and feeling like they are in a situation where there is mutual appreciation for what the person wants to do and what the person wants done to them, you know, and that I think is so beautiful about BDSM. And it's probably very frustrating for men who just watch porn. I mean, fuck, I say men because I only date men, but probably women too, who they just watch BDSM porn and they think it's gonna be, you know, daddy this, daddy that. I'll never forget when I met my partner, Nathan. He and I didn't do anything sexual or physical for a whole month. He got to know me really well. We talked a lot. We really got to know each other and he got to know some of the fucked up stuff about me. And we connected in a way where every time we've ever done anything intimacy-wise has been mind-blowingly great, you know? And I before him, I had never really experienced a man who cared enough to really think about what I like and think about how I like things to go and make me feel like I have an opinion in the bedroom. Most of the times I've been with men that has just like not even been on the table. So it was really nice for me to be in a relationship like that. Well, it is really nice for me because we're still together. But you know, I think that like, you know, I'm gonna make a video at some point about the mainstreaming of BDSM because I don't agree with that, but I think that there's a lot of benefit that would come from people having more research and looking into BDSM, because I think that it would really help the way that they communicate in general. You know, the general concept of, you know, respecting each other's consent and boundaries, even if they're confusing to us personally, is something that most people, I think, could benefit from. But people just think it's a weird sex thing and just totally ignore all of the really amazing life lessons that can come out of it. But, you know, I think it's one of those things that you wouldn't know until you get there. I remember coming to dungeons really early on and kind of being frustrated that it was just a bunch of women getting spanked on the wall. Then I turned into one of those women and it was a good time. But I remember being like confused and maybe a little frustrated that it wasn't exactly the risque experience that I was expecting it to be. But I don't know, it's deep. And I think that like, it's worth investigating if you're curious. Maybe we'll do a video about that. But anyway, I just wanted to share that, just share my thoughts and tell you guys how I felt about that, because I do think it was kind of an interesting thing to learn that so many people, I mean, I knew that so many people just saw BDSM as sexual, but you know, it's so much more to that than to so many people. And I wish more people got that. I really do. So anyway, on that note, if you made it through this entire video, please put this emoji in the comment section below. I would greatly, greatly appreciate that. People who put the emoji are the coolest kids in school and are always invited to the really awesome underground party that we have every Tuesday evening after True Tea. You know the one. People who have been here for weeks know the party I'm talking about, but I understand if you're new and you haven't put the emoji in, you just haven't been invited to that club. So, you know, I get with the winning team. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, I'll see you guys next week. Right now, you are looking at 2 videos you can watch if you'd like to continue to sip True Tea right here on this channel. And in the corner, there are several ways you can send me a tip if that is something that you would like to do. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.